Before the rise of the Alliance and the Horde, the world was shaped by forces far older than any mortal kingdom. Before swords clashed and magic tore the skies asunder, before heroes walked the lands of Azeroth, there existed only the vast emptiness of the great dark beyond, where cosmic powers waged eternal war for the very soul of existence itself. This is the story of Warcraft, a chronicle spanning tens of thousands of years, encompassing the rise and fall of empires, the corruption of noble souls, and the never-ending struggle between order and chaos, light and shadow, life and death. The dawn of creation, when cosmic forces collided. In the beginning, before time held meaning, and before the stars themselves ignited in the void, there was conflict. The universe as we know it was born not from tranquility, but from the eternal struggle between two primordial forces, light and void. These opposing energies clashed throughout the infinite expanse of the great dark beyond, their collision creating reality itself. From this fundamental conflict emerged the physical universe, a battleground where matter and energy coalesced into worlds, stars, and the very fabric of existence. But light and void were not alone in this cosmic arena. Mysterious beings known only as the First Ones shaped the fundamental laws of reality, creating 6 governing forces that would define all of creation. These forces each manifested as their own cosmic power: light and its eternal nemesis, the void, the structured perfection of order represented by the Titans, the wild unpredictability of disorder embodied by demons, the natural cycle of life, and the inevitable entropy of death. Each force had its own realm, its own pantheon of guardians, and its own designs upon the universe. The First Ones created the Eternal Ones to govern death within a realm called the Shadowlands, establishing Zereth Mortis as their seat of power. They created systematic approaches to existence itself, designing afterlives and cosmic mechanisms that would process souls throughout eternity. Yet even these godlike architects could not foresee all the consequences of their grand design, nor could they prevent the corruption that would one day twist their creations toward darkness. Within the great dark beyond, slumbering deep within the cores of certain worlds, existed the most precious and powerful beings in all creation, world souls. These nascent titans lay dormant within planets, suffusing their homes with incredible arcane energy while they slowly matured over eons. Each world soul represented the potential for a titan to be born, a being of unimaginable power capable of shaping entire sectors of reality according to the cosmic force of order. The first world soul to awaken was Amanthul, the High Father. When consciousness first stirred within him and he emerged from his planetary cradle, he found himself alone in the cosmos, a being of pure arcane energy given form. Yet Amanthul sensed that he could not be the only one of his kind. Driven by an intrinsic need to find others like himself, he set out across the great dark beyond, searching world after world for the telltale signs of slumbering titans. His search was not in vain. One by one, Amanthul discovered other world souls and carefully nurtured them to awakening. Each titan he found joined him in his quest, their combined wisdom and power growing with every new brother and sister they welcomed into existence. Thus was formed the Pantheon of Order, a family of titans dedicated to bringing structure and harmony to the chaotic universe. The Pantheon grew to include mighty titans, each embodying different aspects of order. There was Eonar the Lifebinder, whose very essence resonated with nature and growth, bringing verdant life to barren worlds. Khaz'goroth the Shaper possessed unparalleled mastery over forging and crafting, creating mountains and shaping the very bones of planets. Golganath the Thunderer commanded the fury of seas and storms, his power over the elements unmatched. Norganon the Dreamweaver was the keeper of celestial magic and lore, his understanding of arcane mysteries surpassing all others. Then there was Agramar, the youngest of the Pantheon, but no less mighty. Agramar embodied strength and protection, his warrior spirit complementing the more esoteric powers of his siblings. And finally, there was Sargeras, the greatest of all the Titan warriors, the champion of the Pantheon, whose bronze form towered even over his titanic brethren. Sargeras was strength incarnate, nobility personified, the unwavering defender who would stand against any threat to the Pantheon's ordered universe. Together, the Pantheon traveled the cosmos, seeking out world souls and bringing order to the chaos that plagued existence. They developed methods to detect the presence of world souls within planets, carefully studying each world they encountered. Their process was methodical and thorough. First, they would pacify the raging elementals that often dominated young worlds. Then they would reshape the planet itself, carving mountains, hollowing out seas, and sculpting landscapes. Finally, they would seed the world with various life forms, hoping these actions would help call forth the world soul within and nurture it toward maturity. Most worlds the Pantheon visited proved to be inert, containing no world soul. But the Titans were not discouraged. They made vows to maintain and protect all worlds they encountered, whether they contained world souls or not. To fulfill these vows, they created the Titan-forged mighty servants of stone and metal who would watch over the ordered worlds. They also embedded massive machines called forges within these planets, devices that could monitor the evolutionary progress of each world and, if necessary, purge all life to reset a world that had descended into chaos. To aid in their work, Aman'Thul called upon the Constellar, mysterious celestial beings who would serve as eternal watchers. These star-born sentinels observed the countless worlds ordered by the Titans, vigilant for any sign of corruption or instability. Should a world fall too far into disorder, the Constellar could activate fail-safe procedures to cleanse it entirely, giving evolution another chance to flourish according to the Titans' designs. But not all forces in the universe desired order and harmony. Sargeras, the champion's fall and birth of an inferno. Lurking in the spaces between dimensions, in the chaotic realm known as the Twisting Nether, dwells the demons. These beings of pure chaos and malevolence existed only to corrupt and destroy, feeding upon the energies of living worlds, like parasites devouring their hosts. Demons were manifestations of disorder itself, the antithesis of everything the Pantheon sought to create. They slithered forth from the Nether, invading the physical universe to wreak havoc upon the Titans' carefully ordered worlds. The Pantheon recognized these demons as an existential threat to all they had built. If demons were allowed to rampage unchecked, they would destroy countless worlds and potentially prevent world souls from ever awakening. The Titans needed a defender, a champion who could hunt down these chaotic entities and imprison them before they caused irreparable harm. For this crucial task, they chose their greatest warrior, Sargeras. For countless millennia, Sargeras fulfilled his duty with unwavering dedication. He scoured the cosmos for demons, engaging them in battles that would have shattered lesser beings. His power was absolute, his determination unshakable. One by one, he defeated the most powerful demon races he encountered. He fought the cunning Nathrazim, masters of manipulation and deceit. He battled the brutal Moarg, massive engineers of destruction. He crushed the Eridar's demonic kin and countless other species that threatened the Titans' work. But Sargeras did not simply destroy these demons. He understood that demons, when killed in the physical universe, would simply regenerate within the Twisting Nether, eventually returning to plague the cosmos once more. Instead, he created Mardum, a prison world specifically designed to contain these malevolent entities for eternity. Into this dark fortress planet, he cast the demons he had defeated, sealing them away, where they could never again threaten the Pantheon's ordered universe. Working alongside Agrimar, Sargeras seemed unstoppable. The two Titan warriors complemented each other perfectly, with Agrimar's protective instincts balancing Sargeras's more aggressive approach. Together, they brought security to the Pantheon's efforts, allowing their brothers and sisters to continue their great work without fear of demonic interference. But then Sargeras made a discovery that would change everything. During one of his campaigns against the demons, Sargeras sensed the presence of a world soul. His hope surged. Perhaps this would be another Titan to join the Pantheon, another brother or sister to welcome into their cosmic family. But as he approached the world, his hope transformed into horror. The planet was already in the grip of the old gods, malevolent entities sent by the Void Lords to corrupt world souls, and they had succeeded. The world soul within was twisted beyond recognition, corrupted by shadow and madness, transforming into something the universe had never witnessed, a dark titan. Sargeras understood with terrible clarity what this meant. If this corrupted titan were allowed to awaken, it would possess power rivaling the entire pantheon combined, but bent entirely toward evil and destruction. It would become an avatar of the Void Lords themselves, a weapon capable of unraveling all of creation. In that moment, facing the most horrific sight of his eternal existence, Sargeras made a decision that would echo throughout history. He killed the world soul. His blade, massive beyond mortal comprehension, cleaved the planet in two. The corrupted titan died before it could awaken, its tainted essence dispersing into the cosmos. Sargeras had saved the universe from an unimaginable threat, but the victory felt hollow. As he stared at the ruined world, a terrible realization began to take root in his mind. Sargeras returned to the Pantheon to share what he had learned, certain they would understand the necessity of his actions. But his fellow Titans did not react as he had hoped. They were horrified, not by the corrupted world soul, but by Sargeras' choice to destroy it. They insisted that there might have been another way, that they could have purged the corruption without killing the Titan itself. They chastised their champion, their greatest warrior, for acting rashly. But Sargeras had seen the corruption firsthand. He had witnessed what the Void Lords were capable of achieving. And in that moment of rejection by his own family, darker thoughts began to consume him. If the Void Lords could corrupt world souls, if they could create dark titans, then the universe itself was fundamentally flawed. Every world soul, every potential titan, was a vulnerability that the Void Lords could exploit. The Pantheon's great work of bringing order to the cosmos wasn't building a better future, it was merely creating more targets for corruption. Fear and despair overwhelmed Sargeras. He began to see the universe not as the Pantheon saw it, full of potential and beauty, but as a cosmic trap where life itself was the ultimate weakness. His thoughts grew darker with each passing moment. What if? He wondered, the only way to truly save the universe from the Void Lords was to destroy it entirely. If there were no life, no world souls, nothing for the Void Lords to corrupt, then they could never achieve their goal of spawning a dark titan. To save creation, Sargeras concluded, he would first have to destroy it. The noble champion who had defended the cosmos for eons made a choice that would transform him into its greatest threat. He would create an army capable of cleansing the universe of all life. He would prevent the Void Lords from ever corrupting another world soul by ensuring there were no world souls left to corrupt. In his twisted logic, it was the only merciful path forward. Sargeras traveled to Mardum, the prison world he had created to contain the demons. In an act of catastrophic irony, he shattered his own perfect prison, unleashing every demon he had spent millennia capturing. The explosion of fell energy released was so immense that it warped Sargeras' very form. His bronze skin became twisted and dark, corrupted by the chaotic energies he had once fought against. His noble visage transformed into something terrible and wrathful. The champion of order became a creature of disorder. To the terrified demons now freed from their imprisonment, Sargeras offered a choice: serve him in his great crusade to purge the universe or face permanent annihilation. Empowered by their liberator and terrified of his might, the demons chose servitude. Some Sargeras gifted with increased stature and power. Others he granted enhanced intelligence, elevating them from mindless destroyers to cunning strategists. He forged them into a unified force with a singular purpose. Thus was born the Burning Legion. Sargeras' first target with his newly formed army was a test of the Pantheon's response. When he set his legion upon a world watched over by a constellar, he did not hesitate. He personally slew the Celestial Guardian, demonstrating that not even the Pantheon's most trusted watchers could stand against him. This act of defiance signaled the point of no return. The Burning Legion began its rampage across the cosmos, world after world falling to its fury. Sargeras did not simply conquer, he annihilated. Every planet the Legion touched was scoured clean of all life, reduced to a burning husk. Sargeras believed he was performing a mercy, preventing these worlds from ever falling to void corruption. But to the universe, he had become the very force of destruction he once fought against. On the world of Argus, Sargeras found the perfect lieutenants for his crusade. The Eridar were a highly advanced race with natural mastery over magic in all its forms. Their civilization had reached heights of knowledge and power that few species in the universe could match. Based on what we know from various sources, Sargeras approached their leaders with promises of even greater power, offering them the chance to join his legion and wield might beyond their imagining. Two of the Eridar triumvirate, Kil'jaeden and Archimonde, were seduced by Sargeras' offer. Kil'jaeden the Deceiver possessed a brilliant mind for manipulation and strategy, seeing in Sargeras' offer a path to godhood. Archimonde the Defiler craved raw power above all else, and Sargeras promised to grant him strength beyond measure. Together, these two leaders accepted Sargeras' gift, transforming into towering demons of fell might. The third member of the triumvirate, Velen, sensed the darkness in Sargeras' offer. Blessed with visions of the future by divine entities known as the Naru, Velen saw the terrible fate that awaited Argus and his people if they accepted the Dark Titan's bargain. He gathered those Eridar who would listen to his warnings and fled Argus mere hours before Sargeras' corruption consumed the world. These refugees would come to be known as the Draenei, the exiled ones doomed to flee from the Burning Legion for thousands of years. But most of the Eridar remained, accepting corruption and transformation into the Man'ari, the primary commanders and overlords of the Burning Legion. With Kil'jaeden and Archimonde at his side, Sargeras possessed not just an army, but strategists capable of complex campaigns across multiple worlds simultaneously. Kil'jaeden proved particularly valuable in expanding the Legion's capabilities. It was he who suggested that the Legion needed methods beyond brute force to conquer worlds. Some civilizations might be corrupted from within, their own leaders and mages turned into unwitting agents of the Legion's will. Kil'jaeden became a master of these subtle tactics, subverting entire civilizations before the Legion ever set foot on their soil. The Burning Legion grew in both size and sophistication. Entire demon species were brought into the fold, each serving specific roles in the Legion's endless war. The Pit Lords served as brutal commanders and shock troops, their massive forms tearing through armies. The Doomguard acted as elite infantry, disciplined and deadly. The Fellhounds hunted down magic users with single-minded ferocity. The Succubi manipulated and corrupted mortal minds. The Infernals rained from the skies like hellish meteors, crushing resistance wherever they fell. But the greatest tragedy of Sargeras' fall was yet to come, for his betrayal would soon bring him into conflict with those he once called family, the Primordial Terror, Old Gods, and the Black Empire. While Sargeras descended into madness and the Burning Legion began its campaign of destruction, other dark forces had been at work in the universe for far longer. In the spaces between dimensions, dwelling in the realm known as the Void Lords plotted their own schemes of cosmic domination. The Void Lords were beings of pure shadow and entropy, existing in a state that defied physical comprehension. They were ancient beyond measure, predating even the Titan's rise to consciousness. These entities despised the ordered universe created by the Titans, viewing the very existence of light and structure as an affront to their nature. More than anything else, the Void Lords coveted the power of the Titans themselves. But there was a fundamental problem with the Void Lords' ambitions. They could not enter the physical universe. Their forms were too vast, too alien, too fundamentally incompatible with reality as the Titans had shaped it. The Void Lords were trapped in their shadowy realm, able to observe the physical universe, but unable to directly influence it in meaningful ways. Their attempts to corrupt the Titans themselves had proven futile. The mature Titans were too powerful, too pure, their connection to order too absolute to be swayed by shadow. If the Void Lords could not corrupt existing Titans, they would corrupt world souls instead. The Void Lords devised a plan of breathtaking scope and patience. They pooled their vast energies together and created servants that could exist in the physical universe, the Old Gods. These entities were living manifestations of the Void's corruption, parasitic beings designed to find world souls and twist them toward shadow. Each old god was a horror beyond mortal comprehension, a mass of writhing tentacles, countless eyes, and blasphemous forms that defied natural law. The Void Lords hurled these old gods out into the cosmos, casting them like seeds upon the wind. They did not know which planets contained world souls, so they simply sent their creations everywhere, hoping that enough would land on Titan-bearing worlds to eventually corrupt one. It was a strategy of sheer probability, a cosmic gambit that accepted countless failures in exchange for a single, universe-shattering success. And one day, millions of years ago, 4 of these old gods crashed into a world that would later be known as Azeroth. The old gods that struck Azeroth were Zharj, Cthulhu, Yogg-Saron, and Nazoth. Each embedded itself deep into the planet's crust, immediately beginning to spread corruption across the surface. From their massive bodies seeped organic matter that coalesced into servant races. The Naraki, faceless horrors of squirming flesh and alien geometry, emerged to serve as the old gods' priests and warriors. The Akir, insectoid monstrosities of chittering malevolence, swarmed across the land in vast numbers. These servant races began constructing vast temple cities around each old god, creating citadels of nightmare stone and impossible architecture. Y'Shaarj, the most powerful of the 4, commanded the largest territory. Cthulhu established dominion over what would one day become the deserts of Silithus. Yogg-Saron burrowed deep beneath the frozen north, its influence spreading through the earth itself. Noth, the most cunning and subtle of the 4, claimed territories beneath what would become the Great Ocean. The old gods did not cooperate. While they all served the same masters in the void, they competed viciously with one another for dominance over Azeroth. Massive wars erupted between their servant armies, with warlord Xanath leading Nazoth's forces against the combined might of Cthulhu and Yogg-Saron's domains. These conflicts scarred the primordial landscape, but ultimately the old gods cared little for the surface world. Their true objective lay far deeper, beneath Azeroth's crust. Slumbering in the planet's molten core, existed what the old gods had been created to find, a world soul. And not just any world soul, but the most powerful one the Pantheon had ever discovered. The nascent Titan Azeroth represented the greatest prize in all of existence. Should the old gods succeed in corrupting her, the resulting Dark Titan would possess power exceeding even Sargeras at the height of his strength. The old gods sent their essence deeper and deeper into the planet, their tendrils worming their way through the earth toward the slumbering Titan. They whispered to her in her dreams, planting seeds of doubt and darkness in her nascent consciousness. Layer by layer, they wrapped themselves around her, embedding their corruption so thoroughly into Azeroth's planetary structure that they became inseparable from the world itself. But the old gods' corruption was not limited to the world soul. They enslaved the elemental forces that raged across Azeroth's surface, binding the elemental lords to their will. Ragnaros, the Fire Lord, master of all flame, became their pawn. Alakir, the Wind Lord, sovereign of the skies, served their dark purposes. Therazane, the Stone Mother, embodiment of Earth itself, was bound to their command. And Neptulon, the Tide Hunter, Lord of all waters, fought in their name. With the elementals under their control, the old gods commanded forces of nature itself. They set the elements against each other in endless conflict, keeping the surface of Azeroth in a state of perpetual chaos. Fire battled water, earth crushed air. The entire planet became a realm of elemental fury, a world consumed by the wars of primordial forces. This era became known as the Black Empire, a time when the old gods and their servants ruled Azeroth absolutely. No other life flourished during this dark age. The land was covered in the twisted citadels of the Akir and Nuraki. Strange and terrible experiments were conducted in the depths of the old gods' temples. Sacrifices were offered to beings that should not exist. It was a nightmare made manifest, a world utterly consumed by shadow. The old gods believed they had succeeded. They had found a world soul of unprecedented power. They were slowly, inevitably corrupting it. Given enough time, thousands or millions of years, the Titan Azeroth would awaken as a being of the void, a dark Titan who would destroy the Pantheon and hand the universe to the Void Lords. But the old gods had not accounted for one crucial factor. The Pantheon was still searching for world souls, and one day they would find Azeroth, the ordering of Azeroth. When Titans clashed with gods, after Sargeras's betrayal and departure, Agramar continued the work of seeking out world souls across the cosmos. The loss of his greatest friend and mentor weighed heavily on Agramar, but he refused to abandon the Pantheon's mission. He traveled alone through the great dark beyond, listening for the telltale psychic emanations that indicated a slumbering Titan. And then, from across vast gulfs of space, Agramar heard the most beautiful sound he had ever encountered, the tranquil dreams of a world soul, far more powerful than any the Pantheon had yet discovered. The emanations were clear, strong, and utterly magnificent. Agramar rushed toward the source of these dreams, hope filling his spirit. Perhaps this new Titan would help heal the wound left by Sargeras's fall. But when Agramar arrived at the world that would be called Azeroth, hope transformed into horror. The planet's surface was a nightmare of writhing darkness and elemental chaos. Massive citadels of impossible architecture dotted the landscape, and worse, Agramar could sense the old gods embedded in the world's crust, their tendrils reaching toward the world soul like parasites feeding on a host. The young Titan realized he was witnessing the Pantheon's worst nightmare, a world soul in the process of being corrupted. The old gods had not yet succeeded in their dark work. The world soul of Azeroth remained pure, untouched by shadow. But it was only a matter of time. Unless the Pantheon acted immediately, Azeroth would fall to the void and a dark Titan would be born. Agramar fled the system, racing back to his brothers and sisters with news of his discovery. He pleaded with the Pantheon to take action, arguing that Sargeras had been right about one thing: corrupted world souls represented an existential threat to all creation. But unlike Sargeras, Agramar believed they could save Azeroth without destroying her. They had to try. Adorn the Lifebinder immediately sided with Agramar, insisting that they could not abandon a world soul to corruption. Together, they convinced the rest of the Pantheon that Azeroth was worth the risk. The Titans would wage war against the old gods and save the nascent Titan within. But this war would not be like any the Pantheon had fought before. The Titans themselves were massive beyond mortal comprehension, their very footsteps capable of reshaping continents. If they walked upon Azeroth in their true forms, they might accidentally harm or even kill the world soul they sought to protect. The Titans needed an army that could fight in their stead, powerful enough to challenge the old gods, but small enough to operate on the planetary surface without causing catastrophic damage. Khaz'goroth the Shaper set to work creating such an army. Using his unparalleled mastery of forging and artifice, he shaped the first Titan forged from the very stone and metal of Azeroth itself. These were beings of living metal and animated stone, each designed for specific purposes. In the coming war, the Titans' creation were organized into legions, with the greatest among them designated as Keepers, lieutenants who would command the Titan-forged armies and serve as the Titans' direct representatives on Azeroth. The most prominent Keepers included Ra, whom the Titans charged with watching over the southern lands; Odin, who would command from the northern reaches; Loken, who served as prime designate; Thorim, master of storms; Hodir, commander of winter; Tyr, the embodiment of justice and order; Archdus, guardian of the deep places of the world; Freya, tender of life and nature; and Mimiron, the great inventor, whose genius rivaled even Khaz'goroth's own. Beneath the Keepers came specialized Titan-forged races. The Vrykul were massive humanoid warriors, fierce and proud. The Mogu were stone-skinned giants tasked with carving the waterways and rivers. The Earthen specialized in shaping mountains and delving into the planet's depths. The Mechanomes served as engineers and tinkerers, maintaining the various machines the Titans would install across Azeroth. The Stone Giants and Sea Giants shaped the land and oceans respectively, while the Iron Dwarves worked the forges and maintained the foundries. With their army prepared, the Titans launched their assault on the Black Empire. The war was unlike anything Azeroth had ever witnessed. Titan-forged legions marched against the endless swarms of Akwar and Naraki. Massive battles raged across every continent as the servants of order clashed with the minions of the void. The keepers led from the front, their power blazing like stars upon the battlefield. Slowly, methodically, the Titanforged pushed back the old gods' forces, reclaiming territory inch by bloody inch. The old gods themselves joined the battle, their colossal forms emerging from their temple cities to crush the Titan-forged armies. Y'Shaarj proved the most formidable, its 7 heads unleashing devastation upon anything that approached. Cthulhu's 1,000 eyes drove Titan-forged warriors mad with visions of horror. Yagad Saran's whispers corrupted the minds of those who fought it, turning allies against each other. N'Zoth remained hidden, pulling strings from the shadows, manipulating events even as the battle raged. The Titan-forged armies threw themselves against the old gods with unwavering dedication, but they could not land a killing blow. The old gods were simply too powerful, too deeply entrenched in the world. For every Naraki slain, 2 more emerged from the temple cities. For every Akir destroyed, 100 more scuttled forth to replace it. Watching from above, the Titans grew frustrated. They had hoped their armies alone would be sufficient, but it was becoming clear that direct intervention was necessary. Aman'Thul, the High Father, decided to take action himself. Reaching down from the heavens, Aman'Thul's massive hand grasped Y'Shaarj, the strongest of the old gods. With one tremendous pull, the High Father tore Y'Shaarj completely out of Azeroth's crust. The old god's death scream echoed across the planet as its form was ripped asunder, its malevolent essence dispersed into nothingness. But victory came at a terrible cost. Where Y'Shaarj had been embedded, a massive wound now gaped in Azeroth's surface. From this wound poured the lifeblood of the world soul herself, pure arcane energy bleeding out in torrents. The nascent titan Azeroth was hemorrhaging, her very essence flowing out through the injury. If the bleeding wasn't stopped, the world soul would die. The Pantheon was horrified. In trying to save Azeroth, they had nearly killed her, and worse, they now understood the terrible truth. The old gods had embedded themselves so deeply into the planet's structure that removing them would destroy Azeroth entirely. The Titans had only 2 choices: leave the old gods in place and watch as they slowly corrupted the world soul, or remove them and kill Azeroth in the process. The Keepers worked frantically to seal the wound Y'Shaarj had left behind. Using powerful wards and arcane containment, they managed to stop the bleeding, but they could not completely heal the injury. The massive gaping wound became a lake of roiling arcane energy, the very lifeblood of Azeroth made manifest. This lake would later be known as the Well of Eternity, and it would play a crucial role in the world's future. Faced with an impossible choice, the Titans made a decision that would define Azeroth's fate for millennia to come. They would not remove the remaining old gods. Instead, they would imprison them, binding them deep beneath the surface of the world with magical seals so powerful that the old gods could never escape. The Keepers constructed massive prisons in the depths of Azeroth, each designed to contain a specific old god for eternity. Cthulhu was imprisoned beneath what would become the Desert of Silithus, sealed within the temple city of Ankiraj. Yogg Saron was bound within the Titan facility of Ulduar in the frozen north, locked away behind mechanisms and wards designed by the Titans themselves. N'Zoth, the most cunning of the old gods, was imprisoned beneath the ocean, sealed away in the depths where its whispers could not easily reach the surface world. But imprisonment was not the same as destruction. The old gods still lived, and evidence throughout history suggests their influence continued to seep out from their prisons in subtle but persistent ways. Y'Shaarj, though dead, left behind a curse that would plague Azeroth for thousands of years. Where its body had fallen, in what would become the continent of Pandaria, its essence seeped into the earth, giving birth to the Shar, manifestations of negative emotions that would torment the land. With the old gods imprisoned, the Titan-forged armies turned their attention to the remaining servants of the Void. The Akir Empire was shattered, its surviving members fleeing to isolated corners of the world. The Naki were driven into the depths, forced to hide in the darkest places of Azeroth. The elemental lords, freed from the old gods' control, but still unruly and chaotic, were banished to their own separate realm called the Elemental Plane, where they could war amongst themselves without threatening the surface world. The Pantheon's next task was to reshape Azeroth entirely, a process that would become known as the Ordering of Azeroth. The Titans themselves remained in orbit, but their keepers carried out their will across the planet's surface. Mountains were raised where the Titans deemed them necessary. Oceans were carved out and filled. Rivers were guided into new courses. The very geography of the world was transformed according to the Titan's grand design. Khazgoroth himself descended briefly to install the Forge of Wills and the Forge of Origination, massive Titan facilities that would allow the Keepers to shape life on Azeroth and, if necessary, completely reset the planet's evolutionary progress if things went too far astray. Other facilities were built across the world: Uldaman, Ulduar, Uldum, the Halls of Origination, the Halls of Stone, and many more. Each served a specific purpose in maintaining the ordering and protecting the world's soul. To further protect Azeroth before their departure, the Pantheon worked through their keepers to empower 5 proto-dragons, transforming them into the dragon aspects. Alexstrasza the Lifebinder received power over life itself, a gift from Eonar channeled through the keepers. Ysera the Dreamer was bound to the Emerald Dream, a perfect mirror of nature. Nosdormu the Timeless received power over time from Aman'Thul's blessing. Malygos the Spellweaver was given dominion over magic by Norgannon's gift, and Neltharion the Earthwarder was granted power over the earth itself through Khazgoroth's might. These 5 dragon aspects would serve as Azeroth's guardians, each watching over their specific domain and working together to protect the world from future threats. They were given near immortality and tremendous power, tasked with ensuring that what happened during the Black Empire could never happen again. With the ordering complete, the Pantheon prepared to depart. They had done all they could for Azeroth. The old gods were imprisoned, the elementals were banished, the world was reshaped and protected by both Titan-forged and dragon aspects. The nascent world soul was safe to continue her slow maturation in peace. Yet the Pantheon's work was not yet finished. Agramar continued searching for more world souls across the cosmos. During his travels, he sensed something terrible: the unmistakable presence of Sargeras and the Burning Legion destroying world after world. When Agramar attempted to reason with his former mentor, hoping to bring Sargeras back from his dark path, the corrupted Titan struck him down without hesitation. The news of Agramar's fall reached the rest of the Pantheon. They gathered their strength and confronted Sargeras, hoping to stop their wayward brother before he could do more harm. Aman'Thul pleaded with Sargeras, speaking of Azeroth and the nascent Titan's potential to one day stand against the Void Lords. But Sargeras was unmoved by their words. The battle that followed was catastrophic. Despite their combined might, the Pantheon could not match Sargeras's fel-empowered fury. One by one, the Titans fell before their former champion. In his final moments, Norgannon wove a protective spell around the Pantheon's spirits, preventing them from being destroyed entirely. These disembodied souls were cast across the cosmos, eventually reaching Azeroth, where they attempted to merge with the Keepers. The Titan-forged bodies could not contain such power, and the spirits faded, leaving only fragmented memories that the Keepers could not fully comprehend. The Keepers attempted to reach out to the Pantheon, but received no response. Ra, who understood more than the others, extracted what remained of Aman'Thul's essence and stored it in a vault near the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. Overcome with despair at the loss of his creators, Ra retreated into isolation, believing the Titans had been destroyed forever. The Children of the Stars, Rise of the Kaldore. Thousands of years after the Titans departed Azeroth, life began to flourish across the ordered world. The planet, no longer dominated by the chaotic wars of the Black Empire, entered an age of natural growth and evolution. Forests spread across the land. Creatures of all kinds emerged and thrived. The world, though still bearing scars of its dark past, was becoming a place of beauty and vitality. The Titan-forged continued their vigil, maintaining the various facilities the Pantheon had left behind. But over time, something unexpected began to happen to these metallic and stone servants. A strange affliction spread among them, something the Keeper Loken would later identify as the Curse of Flesh. Historical evidence and keeper records suggest this mysterious transformation was the work of the imprisoned old gods, whose influence continued to seep from their prisons in ways the Titans had not anticipated. The curse slowly transformed the Titan Forged from beings of living stone and metal into creatures of flesh and blood. The Vrykul became more susceptible to the curse and began giving birth to smaller, weaker offspring, the first humans. The earthen transformed into the dwarves and gnomes. The mechagnomes became the mortal gnomes. Each Titan-forged race saw a portion of its population transformed, creating new species that would spread across Azeroth and develop their own civilizations. But while the Titan-forged dealt with their transformation, another species was rising to dominance in the primordial forests of ancient Kalimdor, the Trolls. Trolls were among the earliest naturally evolved sapient species on Azeroth. They were fierce, adaptable, and highly territorial. Different troll tribes developed across the supercontinent, each adapting to their specific environment. The Zandalari established a golden empire in the southern jungles. The Gurabashi claimed the dense rainforests. The Amani ruled the forests of the northeast, and the dark trolls inhabited the shadowy woods near the center of the continent. One particular tribe of dark trolls, less concerned with territorial conquest and more interested in a peaceful existence, settled near the shores of a massive lake at the center of Kalimdor. This was no ordinary lake. It was the Well of Eternity, the wound left behind when Aman'Thul tore Y'Sharj from Azeroth, a massive pool of arcane energy that was literally the lifeblood of the world's soul. These dark trolls were drawn to the well's tranquil beauty and mysterious power. They made their homes along its shores, drinking its waters and bathing in its energies. Generation after generation of dark trolls lived beside the well, and over thousands of years, the well's cosmic power affected the tribe, making them strong, wise, and eventually transforming them in ways that would set them apart from their troll heritage entirely. Their skin, once gray or black, shifted to shades of violet and dark blue. Their bodies grew taller, more refined, more graceful. Their connection to magic deepened exponentially. Their lifespans extended, some eventually becoming functionally immortal. They lost their regenerative abilities, but gained something far more precious, an innate understanding of arcane magic that no other mortal race could match. These transformed trolls gave themselves a new name, abandoning their tribal identity for something grander, Kaldori, which in their developing language meant children of the stars. They would become known to history as the Night Elves. The Night Elves' civilization grew rapidly as they mastered the powers of the Well of Eternity. They built great cities of silver and moonstone around the lake's shores. Their capital, Zin Azshari, meaning Glory of Azshara, was a marvel of architecture and magical innovation. Towering spires reached toward the stars they so loved. Gardens of impossible beauty graced every corner. Magical fountains created from well water provided both sustenance and wonder. The Night Elves discovered they had a powerful ally in the ancient demigod Cenarius, a being who embodied the harmony between nature and magic. Cenarius taught them druidism, showing them how to commune with nature while still maintaining their civilization. Under his tutelage, the Night Elves learned to balance their innate magical abilities with a deep respect for the natural world. The Night Elf Empire expanded across Kalimdor, bringing other races under their influence or dominion. They clashed frequently with the Troll empires, and though the Trolls initially resisted fiercely, the Night Elves' mastery of arcane magic proved superior to the Trolls' more primitive magic. Slowly but inexorably, the Night Elves pushed back the Troll territories, establishing themselves as the dominant civilization on Azeroth. Leadership of this burgeoning empire fell to Queen Azshara, whose name means queen in the Kaldori language. Azshara was considered the most beautiful and powerful night elf to ever live. Her magical prowess exceeded all others of her kind, and her beauty was so legendary that the Night Elves believed she could have no name but the word for royalty itself. She commanded absolute loyalty from her people, who saw her as the perfect embodiment of everything the Kaldori aspired to be. But Azshara's perfection came with a cost. She surrounded herself with an elite group of Night Elves, known as the Highborn, who shared her obsession with exploring the depths of magical power. These highborn devoted themselves entirely to studying the Well of Eternity, conducting experiments, and pushing the boundaries of what magic could accomplish. They wore elaborate robes of turquoise and silver, distinguishing themselves from the common night elves who still honored the old ways of balance with nature. Under Azshara's rule, night elf society began to stratify. The highborn saw themselves as superior to other night elves, and the common folk as superior to other races entirely. Azshara encouraged this attitude, viewing the night elves and especially herself and her highborn as the rightful rulers of all Azeroth. Other races were at best servants, at worst vermin to be exterminated or ignored. This growing arrogance concerned Cenarius deeply. The demigod watched as the night elves he had helped guide toward harmony now turned increasingly toward hubris and excess. The highborn's reckless use of the Well of Eternity particularly worried him. They drew upon the well's power constantly, heedless of what consequences their magical experiments might have. They created artifacts of tremendous power with no thought to who might eventually misuse them. They reshaped reality on whims, bending the world to their desires simply because they could. But Azshara and her highborn stubbornly refused to moderate their magical pursuits. In their minds, they were destined for greatness, and magic was the tool that would elevate them to godhood. The warnings of Cenarius and the concerns of the common night elves were dismissed as the jealous murmurings of lesser beings who couldn't comprehend the heights to which the highborn aspired. Year by year, the night elves' magical activities grew more ambitious and more reckless. They sent ripples of arcane energy out from the Well of Eternity, waves of magical power that traveled across Azeroth and even beyond into the space between dimensions known as the Twisting Nether. And in that chaotic realm, something noticed, something that had been searching for Azeroth for a very, very long time. The War of the Ancients, when demons came to paradise. 10,000 years before the rise of the human kingdoms, before the orcs ever set foot on Azeroth, before even the ancestors of modern mortals had fully evolved, the Night Elves' reckless use of the Well of Eternity sent pulses of arcane energy screaming across the cosmos. These energies, bright and powerful, resonated through the twisting nether like a beacon. Sargeras, the Dark Titan, felt these emanations and was drawn to their source. His attention, which had been focused on other worlds in his endless crusade to purge the universe of life, now turned toward Azeroth. For just a moment, as his consciousness touched the world soul of Azeroth opened one eye and gazed back at him. In that instant of connection, Sargeras was enraptured. He saw the nascent titan within Azeroth, sensed her incredible potential, and became utterly obsessed. This was the world soul the Pantheon had been protecting, the one they claimed could one day oppose the Void Lords. But Sargeras did not see a future savior. He saw a prize to be claimed, a powerful being to be corrupted into his service. Since that moment, Sargeras had made Azeroth his primary objective. Everything else, every other world, every other target of the Burning Legion became secondary to his desire to possess the world soul. He commanded Kil'jaeden and Archimonde to devise a plan to infiltrate Azeroth and prepare it for his arrival. Kil'jaeden observed the Night Elves and recognized an opportunity. Queen Azshara's pride and hunger for power made her the perfect target for corruption. Using his mastery of manipulation, Kil'jaeden reached out to Azshara through her dreams, presenting himself as a benevolent god who wished to grant her and her people unimaginable power. He whispered of a great transformation that would elevate the Night Elves beyond mere mortals, making them equals to the Titans themselves. Azshara, whose vanity knew no bounds, was seduced by these promises. She believed she deserved divinity, that her perfection and power entitled her to godhood. When Kil'jaeden suggested that she and her highborn could achieve this transformation by opening a portal to allow his master into Azeroth, Azshara eagerly agreed. The queen commanded her most talented highborn to begin the ritual. At the center of the Well of Eternity, they wove a spell of unprecedented complexity, drawing upon the limitless energies of the lake to tear open a gateway between Azeroth and the Twisting Nether. It would take time, they knew, to create a portal large enough for Sargeras himself to pass through, but they could begin smaller, allowing lesser beings through first to prepare the way for their dark god. The portal opened with a flash of sickly green light, and the first demons of the Burning Legion stepped onto Azerothian soil. They came in their thousands, fellhounds, their slavering jaws dripping with toxic drool, poured through the gateway. Felguards, massive demon warriors clad in armor of fel-forged steel, marched in disciplined ranks. Doomguards descended from the skies, their wings of flame casting shadows across the land. And the Eridar warlocks came, wielding fel magic so powerful it set the very air ablaze. Leading the initial invasion was Manaroth, the brutal king of the Pit Lords. This colossal demon stood stories tall, his massive frame rippling with fel-enhanced muscle. Beside him came Archimon the Defiler himself, the strategic genius who would oversee the Legion's conquest. These two commanders began coordinating the Legion's assault, directing their demonic forces to spread across Kalimdor like a plague. The demons showed no mercy. Every Night Elf village they encountered was annihilated. The Legion didn't seek to conquer or enslave, they sought only to destroy. Searing infernals, massive constructs of fel metal and hellfire, were called down from the skies like burning meteors, crashing through the elegant spires of Night Elf architecture and crushing hundreds beneath their molten weight. The peaceful forests that the Night Elves had tended for millennia were set ablaze with felfire that consumed everything it touched. Not all Night Elves supported Azshara's madness. As the demons spread across the land and the true nature of the Queen's bargain became clear, many Kaldori rose up in resistance. Leading this rebellion was a young Night Elf of no particular noble birth, Malfurion Stormrage. Malfurion was a student of Cenarius, one of the few Night Elves who had continued to study Druidism even as most of his people turned entirely to arcane magic. He had a gift for communing with nature that exceeded even his teacher's expectations. When the demonic invasion began, Malfurion understood immediately that the Burning Legion would not stop until all life on Azeroth was extinguished. Malfurion's twin brother Illidan also joined the resistance, though his motivations were more complex. Illidan possessed magical talents that rivaled even the most powerful Highborn, but he had been rejected by Azshara's inner circle because of his amber eyes, a trait considered an ill omen among the Night Elves. This rejection festered in Illidan's heart, creating a hunger for power and recognition that would one day lead him down a dark path. Joining the brothers was Tyrande Whisperwind, High Priestess of Elune and Malfurion's beloved. Tyrande commanded the Sisterhood of Elune, an order of warrior priestesses devoted to the Moon Goddess. Her forces, while trained in combat, had primarily served as protectors of Night Elf society in peaceful times. Now they would face the greatest threat their civilization had ever known. The Kaldore Resistance, as this rebel group became known, found an unlikely leader in Kurtalos Ravencrest, a noble who commanded respect from Night Elves across the Empire. Though initially hesitant to oppose his queen openly, Ravencrest eventually recognized that Azshara had doomed their civilization. He rallied his own forces and those of other nobles who still maintained their sanity, creating a proper military opposition to the Legion. But even with Ravencrest's armies, the Night Elves were being pushed back on all fronts. The Legion's numbers seemed endless. For every demon slain, 10 more poured through the expanding portal at the Well of Eternity. The Night Elf resistance was brave and skilled, but they were fighting a losing battle. Malfurion knew they needed help. He persuaded Ravencrest to seek allies among the other races of Azeroth, though this suggestion horrified many of the elder Night Elves. The idea of asking lesser races for aid went against everything the Kaldori had believed about their superiority, but desperation overcame pride. Messengers were sent to the Tauren, the Firbolg, the Earthen, and even the Dragons. Surprisingly, many answered the call. The Tauren, led by their great chieftain Huln Highmountain, marched to war alongside the Night Elves. The Earthen, remembering their mandate to protect Azeroth, mobilized their forces. And most crucially, Cenarius himself joined the battle, rallying the ancients' massive tree beings of incredible power to fight the Legion. The dragon aspects meanwhile took their own action. Alexstrasza, Ysera, Nosdormu, Malagos, and Neltharion all recognized the threat the Burning Legion posed. This was exactly the sort of catastrophe the Titans had empowered them to prevent. Together, the five aspects decided to join the war effort directly. Even with these reinforcements, the war reached a stalemate. The Legion held the area around the Well of Eternity, where Azshara and her Highborn continued their work to open the portal wide enough for Sargeras himself to enter. The Resistance controlled the outer territories, but could not break through the demonic lines to reach the well. It was during this desperate time that something unprecedented occurred. Visitors arrived from the future, through a temporal anomaly caused by the old gods attempting to manipulate the timeways. Three beings from thousands of years in the future were thrown back to this pivotal moment in history. The orc warrior Broxigar, the dragon mage Crassus, actually the red dragon Coriel Strass in mortal guise, and the human wizard Ronan found themselves in ancient Kalimdor, knowing what was supposed to happen, but uncertain whether they should or could change events. These time travelers brought knowledge and perspective from the future that proved invaluable to the Resistance. They warned of the full extent of the Burning Legion's power, having faced demons in their own time. They also brought news that strengthened resolve. The War of the Ancients would end with the demons' defeat, though the cost would be catastrophic. As the war dragged on, Neltharion the Earth Warder proposed a desperate plan to the other aspects. He would forge an artifact of incredible power, one that could channel the combined might of all five dragon aspects into a single devastating attack. This artifact, which Neltharion called the Dragon Soul, would require each aspect to invest a portion of their very essence into its creation. The other aspects, trusting their brother completely, agreed. They poured their power into the Dragon Soul, creating an artifact of unimaginable might, but they did not know that Neltharion had been corrupted by the whispers of the old gods, specifically N'Zoth. The Earth Warder had been driven mad by the constant susurrus of shadowy voices in his mind, promises of power, and visions of a world remade in his image. When the Dragon Soul was complete, Neltharion turned it against his own siblings. The artifact, now empowered with the essence of all five aspects, struck the other four dragons with devastating force. Neltharion attempted to kill his brothers and sisters to claim dominion over dragonkind for himself. Though the other aspects survived, they were grievously wounded and forced to retreat. From that day forward, Neltharion would be known as Deathwing, the aspect of death, a traitor to all he had once stood for. With the dragon aspects betrayed and wounded, the Resistance lost one of its greatest sources of power. The situation grew even more dire when Queen Azshara succeeded in completing the next phase of her ritual. The portal at the Well of Eternity expanded dramatically, and through it stepped Archimonde the Defiler in his full, terrible glory. Archimonde took personal command of the Legion's forces in Azeroth, coordinating assaults with a strategic brilliance that pushed the Resistance to the breaking point. Cities fell. Armies were routed. The very land itself was corrupted by fell energy, transforming verdant forests into burning wastelands. Malfurion, consulting with Cenarius and the Time Travelers, came to a desperate conclusion. The only way to stop the Legion's invasion was to destroy the source of their power on Azeroth, the Well of Eternity itself. If the portal could be closed and the well destroyed, the demons would lose their connection to the twisting nether and could be defeated, but destroying the well would have catastrophic consequences. It was the source of the Night Elves' immortality, the foundation of their power, and the very lifeblood of the world's soul. Its destruction might kill Azeroth herself, yet the alternative, allowing Sargeras to enter the world, would certainly doom not just Azeroth, but the entire universe. Malfurion gathered a strike force including Tyrande, Illidan, Cenarius, and the Time Travelers. Together they fought their way towards Zin-Azshari, where the portal pulsed with ever-increasing power. The very fabric of reality was tearing as Sargeras himself began to push through from the other side. At the Well of Eternity, they confronted Azshara and her highborn. The queen, seeing Sargeras's immense shadow looming in the portal, waited in rapturous anticipation for her dark god to emerge. She had been promised transformation, promised power, promised that she would become a goddess. All she had to do was hold the portal open for a few moments more. Malfurion, channeling powers he barely understood, drew upon the natural energies of Azeroth itself. He called upon every ounce of druidic magic he had learned from Cenarius, and in a moment of desperate inspiration, he seized control of the dragon soul from where it had been abandoned during the chaos. Though the artifact was cursed and dangerous, Malfurion managed to use its power for just long enough to disrupt the portal's magical matrix. The Well of Eternity convulsed. The portal began to collapse. Sargeras, his titanic form half emerged into reality, raged against the closing gateway, but even his immense power could not keep it open. With a scream of fury that echoed across dimensions, the Dark Titan was hurled back into the twisting nether, but the damage was done. The Well of Eternity, already destabilized by the portal's collapse, began to implode. The massive lake of arcane energy started tearing itself apart in a magical cataclysm that threatened to destroy the entire world, the Sundering, when the world broke. The implosion of the Well of Eternity was unlike any disaster Azeroth had ever experienced. The well had been the wound left behind by Y'Sharj's removal, barely contained by the Titan's wards. Now those wards were failing, and the very lifeblood of the world's soul was tearing free in an apocalyptic eruption of pure magical energy. The first to die were Azshara and her highborn, who had remained in Zin Azshara. As the city crumbled around them, the queen found herself drowning in the collapsing well. In her final moments, she cried out for salvation, and something in the depths answered. N'Zoth, the old god imprisoned beneath the ocean, reached out to Azshara with an offer, transformation in exchange for servitude. Azshara, faced with death, accepted. She and her most loyal highborn were twisted by N'Zoth's power, their beautiful forms transformed into something alien and monstrous. Their skin became scaled, their hands webbed, their faces elongated into serpentine visages. They became the Naga, servants of the old god, doomed to dwell in the ocean depths for 10,000 years until N'Zoth called upon them once more. Above, on the surface, the continent of Kalimdor began to tear itself apart. Massive fissures opened in the earth, as the well's implosion created a vortex of impossible magnitude. Entire regions were ripped away from the mainland and flung across the ocean. The single supercontinent that had existed since the Titan's ordering fractured into multiple landmasses, separated by churning seas. Millions died in the catastrophe. Night elves, Tauren, Furbolg, and countless other species were swallowed by the earth or drowned in the suddenly rising oceans. Civilizations that had stood for thousands of years were erased in moments. The carefully ordered world the Titans had created was shattered, transformed into a broken realm where the very geography bore scars of cosmic destruction. Where the Well of Eternity had been, a massive whirlpool formed, the Maelstrom. This gigantic vortex became a permanent wound in the world, a churning abyss that would forever mark the spot where the Night Elves' hubris had nearly destroyed everything. The Maelstrom's fury never subsided, its waters forever churning in memory of the catastrophe. Ships that ventured too close would be pulled into its depths, never to be seen again. The energy swirling within the Maelstrom would remain potent for millennia, a testament to the power that had been unleashed when the well imploded. The surviving Night Elves found themselves scattered across the fragments of Kalimdor. The largest portion, which retained the name Kalimdor, held Mount Hyjal and the surrounding forests. Many Night Elves gathered there, led by Malfurion and Tyrande. Other fragments would eventually be named the Eastern Kingdoms, Northrend, Pandaria, and various smaller landmasses. As the survivors struggled to rebuild, Illidan made a decision that would define his fate. He had secretly saved 7 vials filled with water from the Well of Eternity before its destruction. He could not bear the thought of a world without the well's power, believing that magic was essential to the Night Elves' survival and greatness. Illidan climbed to the peak of Mount Hyjal, where he found a pristine mountain lake. Into this lake, he poured 3 of his vials, recreating the Well of Eternity on a smaller scale. His intention was to preserve their magical heritage and ensure the Night Elves would never lose their connection to arcane power. But Malfurion and the other Night Elves were horrified by Illidan's action. The reckless use of the Well of Eternity had nearly destroyed their entire world. Creating a new well, even a smaller one, seemed like courting disaster all over again. Despite Illidan's protests that he had only tried to help, Malfurion pronounced judgment. Illidan's storm rage would be imprisoned for 10,000 years, sealed away in a barrow prison where he could never threaten the world with his magical obsessions. To protect the new well and prevent its power from being misused, the dragon aspects, those who remained loyal after Neltharion's betrayal, worked together to grow a massive tree atop it. This world tree, which they named Nordrassil, would serve as both a ward and a focus for the well's energies. The tree's roots would reach deep into the well, regulating its power and connecting it to the Emerald Dream, a parallel dimension that mirrored Azeroth's natural state. Each of the loyal aspects blessed Nordrassil. Alexstrasza blessed the Night Elves and the tree with immortality, ensuring that as long as Nordrassil stood, the Kaldore would never age or die of natural causes. Ysera bound the tree to the Emerald Dream, creating a connection that would allow druids to travel into that realm and commune with the spirits of nature. Nosdormu's blessing was more subtle, but equally significant. He shielded the tree from the ravages of time itself, ensuring it would stand eternal. With these blessings in place, the Night Elves entered a new era. Magic was banned throughout their society, forbidden on pain of death. The use of arcane power, they decreed, had brought ruin upon them once and must never be allowed to do so again. Those highborn who survived but refused to abandon their magical studies were exiled, sent away from Kalimdor entirely. These exiled highborn, led by Dath Ramar Sunstrider, traveled across the ocean to the eastern kingdoms. Historical accounts suggest they had acquired one of Illidan's remaining vials of well water, though exactly how this occurred remains unclear. What we do know is that they eventually founded the kingdom of Quel'Thalas and used the vial to create the Sunwell, becoming the ancestors of the High Elves and later the Blood Elves. As for Illidan's other vials, their fate would remain a mystery for thousands of years. On Kalimdor, the remaining Night Elves embraced Druidism and a life in harmony with nature. They established the city of Darnassus and various settlements throughout the forests of what they called Ashenvale and Moonglade. Malfurion became the leader of the Druids, while Tyrande commanded as High Priestess of Elune. Together they guided their people into an age that would become known as the Long Vigil, 10,000 years of isolation during which the Night Elves withdrew from the world to guard Nordrassil and ensure no one ever threatened it again. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the world, other civilizations began to rise. Humans, descended from the cursed Vrykul, established their own kingdoms. Dwarves delved deep into mountains. Gnomes built their cities of innovation. Orcs evolved on the distant world of Draenor. And in the frozen north of Northrend, something evil waited, imprisoned in ice. The War of the Ancients had ended, but its consequences would shape Azeroth's destiny for millennia to come. The old gods still whispered from their prisons. The Burning Legion, though defeated, had not been destroyed. And somewhere in the twisting nether, Sargeras the Dark Titan plotted his return, his obsession with Azeroth's world soul burning brighter than ever. The rise of the Horde, corruption on another world, 10,000 years after the Sundering. While the Night Elves maintained their long vigil on Kalimdor and human kingdoms flourished in the eastern kingdoms, events were unfolding on a distant world that would ultimately bring catastrophe to Azeroth once more. The world of Draenor was vastly different from Azeroth. Its skies burned with shades of red and orange, and its landscape was harsh and unforgiving. Yet life had found a way to thrive there. The planet was home to numerous species, but two would become central to Azeroth's future, the Draenei and the Orcs. The Draenei were the exiled Eredar, who had fled with Velen from Argus when Sargeras corrupted their people. For thousands of years, they had traveled the cosmos, always one step ahead of the Burning Legion. Kil'jaeden, who had once been Velen's brother in all but blood, had never forgiven this betrayal. He hunted the Draenei across the stars, determined to either corrupt or annihilate them. Eventually, the Draenei found their way to Draenor and made it their home, believing they might finally find peace. They built cities and temples, maintained their connection to the light, the cosmic force opposite to the void, and lived in relative harmony with Draenor's other inhabitants. The Orcs were a shamanistic people, divided into numerous clans spread across Draenor. They lived in balance with the elements, their shamans communing with the spirits of air, earth, fire, and water. The Orcish clans were not unified. Each clan operated independently, coming together only occasionally for the Kashharg festival, a celebration of their shared heritage. Different clans had different philosophies and ways of life. The Frostwolf clan, led by Chieftain Durotan, prided themselves on their honor and connection to nature, living in the harsh northern regions of Nagrand. The Warsong clan was fierce and aggressive, their warriors seeking glory in battle. The Bleeding Hollow clan practiced dark shamanism, sometimes veering into territories other clans found disturbing. Into this world came Kil'jaeden's machinations. The Demon Lord finally located the Draenei on Draenor and decided to use the native orcs as weapons against them. But Kil'jaeden was cunning. He would not reveal himself immediately. Instead, he would corrupt the orcs slowly, turning them into the perfect army through manipulation and lies. Kil'jaeden selected a young orc shaman named Gul'dan as his primary agent. Gul'dan was an outcast even among his own people, a hunchbacked orc with ambitions far exceeding his station. He craved power above all else and felt the spirits had abandoned him. When Kil'jaeden appeared to Gul'dan and offered him a new form of power, fell magic, drawn from demonic sources, Gul'dan accepted eagerly. But fell magic came with a terrible price. Those who wielded it were corrupted by it, their very essence twisted by the chaotic energies. Gul'dan's appearance changed, his eyes burning with green fire, his already misshapen form becoming even more grotesque. But he cared nothing for these alterations. The power he wielded made him feel like a god. Gul'dan began teaching other orcs this dark magic, forming a group of fell-wielding spellcasters he called warlocks. He whispered to chieftains and shamans, spreading lies about the Draenei. He claimed the peaceful exiles were planning to destroy the orcs, that they were stealing Draenor's resources, that they represented a threat that must be eliminated before it was too late. Many orcs rejected these lies. Durotan of the Frostwolves in particular was deeply suspicious of Gul'dan and his promises, but others, like Grom Hellscream of the Warsong clan and Blackhand of the Blackrock clan, were more easily swayed. The final corruption came when Manaroth, the same pit lord who had led the Legion's initial assault during the War of the Ancients, arrived on Draenor at Kil'jaeden's summons. Manaroth's blood possessed a corrupting property. Any mortal who drank it would be bound to the Burning Legion, their wills subjugated to demonic masters, their aggression and bloodlust magnified 100-fold. Gul'dan gathered the orc chieftains and through a combination of manipulation and peer pressure, convinced them to drink Manaroth's blood. One by one, the leaders of the orcish clans partook of the crimson draught. As the demon blood entered their veins, their skin turned from brown or gray to a sickly green, their eyes ignited with fell fire. Their capacity for mercy and reason burned away, replaced by an insatiable hunger for violence. Only a few clans refused. The Frostwolves, led by Durotan, rejected the blood offering and fled to the far reaches of Draenor. For this defiance, they would be branded cowards and exiles by the newly formed Horde, the unified orcish army that Gul'dan and his puppet chieftain Blackhand had created. The Horde descended upon the Draenei with genocidal fury. What had been a shamanistic, honorable warrior culture transformed into a mindless killing machine. The orcs slaughtered Draenei by the thousands, burning their cities and temples. Velen, forewarned by visions granted by the Naru, managed to evacuate some of his people, but most of the Draenei on Draenor were annihilated in what would become known as the genocide. But victory over the Draenei left the Horde with a problem. They had become addicted to war and violence, but there were no more enemies left to fight on Draenor. The constant use of fell magic was also draining the planet's life force, causing Draenor itself to begin dying. The Horde needed new worlds to conquer, new victims to slaughter, or the orcs would turn on each other in their bloodlust. It was at this point that Kil'jaeden revealed himself to Gul'dan. The Demon Lord offered the warlock an opportunity. In another world, across the space between dimensions, there existed a planet teeming with life and rich with resources. This world, Kil'jaeden explained, had once resisted the Burning Legion, but if Gul'dan could open a portal to it and lead the Horde through, they could conquer it and claim it for themselves. The world Kil'jaeden spoke of was Azeroth. Gul'dan began working on the portal, but he would need an agent on Azeroth to help open it from the other side. Kil'jaeden provided this agent in the form of a corrupted human, Medivh, the guardian of Tirisfal. Medivh was supposed to be Azeroth's greatest protector. A mage granted incredible power to defend the world from magical threats. But Medivh had been possessed by a fragment of Sargeras's spirit while still in his mother's womb, a corruption that had lain dormant for years. When Medivh matured and his powers awakened, the dark influence within him awakened as well. Working together across dimensions, Gul'dan and the corrupted Medivh opened what would become known as the Dark Portal, a massive gateway connecting Draenor to Azeroth. Through this portal, the Horde would pour into the unsuspecting world, bringing with them the fury of the Burning Legion and setting in motion events that would plunge Azeroth into decades of war. The First War had begun. The Age of Chaos had returned to Azeroth. The Scourge, death given purpose. While the Orcish Horde rampaged across the Eastern Kingdoms, Kil'jaeden was not satisfied with his progress in corrupting Azeroth. The orcs had proven useful, but ultimately uncontrollable and limited in their effectiveness. What Kil'jaeden seemed to want was a more reliable, more devastating weapon to bring Azeroth to its knees before Sargeras's eventual arrival. Though whether this was his original plan or an adaptation after the orcs' failures remains a matter of interpretation among those who study the Legion's strategies. After the Second War, when the Orcish Horde was defeated and scattered, Kil'jaeden sought out a specific orc to punish for his betrayal. Ner'zhul, the elderly shaman who had once been Gul'dan's teacher and who had later attempted to open multiple portals from Draenor to other worlds, was captured by the Demon Lord as Draenor was literally tearing itself apart. Kil'jaeden subjected Ner'zhul to tortures beyond mortal comprehension. He flayed the orc's skin, tore his body apart piece by piece until nothing remained but the shaman's tortured spirit. But Kil'jaeden did not destroy Ner'zhul entirely. Instead, he had a new purpose for the orc's soul, one that would require the Demon Lord's agents to venture into realms even they found unsettling. The Demon Lord's agents, the Nathrezim Dreadlords, had discovered something during their explorations of the cosmos, the Shadowlands, the realm of death itself. This dimension existed outside the normal physical universe, a place where mortal souls journeyed after death to face judgment and afterlife. Within this dark realm, the Dreadlords found an artifact of tremendous power, the Helm of Domination, a crown that could control and bind the souls and bodies of the dead. The helm's origins remain mysterious. Some scholars theorize it was created by the Jailer, one of the Eternal Ones who governed death, though the full truth of this connection would not become clear for many years. What mattered to Kil'jaeden was its function. This artifact could transform its wearer into a master of necromancy, granting power over death itself. Kil'jaeden bound Ner'zhul's spirit to the Helm of Domination, transforming him into something that was no longer orc, no longer mortal, but something else entirely, the Lich King. This new entity possessed power over death and necromancy that rivaled the old gods themselves. And Kil'jaeden had a very specific task for his creation: weaken Azeroth's defenses by creating an undead army that would pave the way for the Burning Legion's next invasion. The Lich King was cast into the frozen wastes of Northrend, the Arctic continent of Azeroth, still bound within the Helm of Domination. The force of the impact created a massive glacier that formed around the helm, creating what would be known as the Frozen Throne. From within this icy prison, the Lich King's consciousness reached out, testing the limits of his new powers and plotting his eventual freedom from Kil'jaeden's control, Ner'zhul found that his essence had been fundamentally transformed. He could animate the dead, pulling their souls back into their corpses and binding them to his will. He could spread a plague that would transform the living into undead servants. He could create liches from powerful spellcasters, preserving their magical abilities while enslaving their spirits. Most terrifyingly, he could influence the minds of the living from vast distances, whispering to them, corrupting them, slowly turning them into willing servants of death without them even realizing they were being manipulated. The Lich King's first servants were the native inhabitants of Northrend. The Drakari ice trolls fell under his control, their corpses raised to serve. The Nerubians, an ancient spider people descended from the Akyr servants of the old gods, proved more resistant. A war erupted beneath the ice as the Nerubian Empire fought desperately against the Scourge. Though the Spider Lords possessed powerful magic and vast underground kingdoms, they eventually fell to the Lich King's relentless assault. Their greatest spellcasters were transformed into liches, their warriors reanimated as undead soldiers, their very civilization consumed and repurposed for the Scourge. The Vrykul, those ancient Titanforge who had not yet been fully affected by the curse of flesh, also fell to the Lich King's power. Some served him willingly, seeing in death a form of eternal glory. Others were simply overwhelmed by his necromantic might. Slowly, an army of death began to form in the frozen north, a force that would eventually number in the hundreds of thousands. But the Lich King was not simply a mindless servant of the Burning Legion. Ner'zhul's consciousness, though twisted and transformed, remained within the Lich King, and Ner'zhul remembered his torment at Kil'jaeden's hands. The orc shaman's spirit burned with a desire for revenge against the demons who had destroyed him. From the very beginning, the Lich King plotted to break free from Kil'jaeden's control. He would build the army the Demon Lord demanded, but ultimately, it would serve only the Lich King himself. To achieve this freedom, the Lich King would need more than an army of mindless undead. He would need agents with intelligence, with power, with the ability to act independently while still serving his will. He would need cultists among the living to spread his plague and recruit new followers. He would need powerful necromancers to command his legions. And most importantly, he would need a champion, someone who could serve as his right hand in the physical world, someone who could eventually free him from the frozen throne itself. The Lich King found his champion in Prince Arthas Menethil of Lordaeron. Arthas was everything the Lich King needed: young, powerful, idealistic, and desperate. As a paladin of the Silver Hand, Arthas had dedicated his life to protecting his people from evil. He was the beloved prince of the most powerful human kingdom, son of the wise King Teranas Menethil, trained personally by the legendary Uther the Lightbringer, and engaged to the talented mage Jaina Proudmoore. His future seemed bright beyond measure, destined for greatness and heroism. But when the plague of undeath, a disease created by the Lich King specifically to transform victims into undead servants, began spreading through Lordaeron, Arthas found himself facing an enemy he could not defeat through courage and righteousness alone. The plague was insidious, spreading through contaminated grain that had been distributed to villages across the kingdom. Those who ate the grain would sicken and die, only to rise again as mindless zombies loyal to the Scourge. No matter how many infected Arthas killed, more appeared. No matter how hard he fought, the plague spread further. The young prince watched his kingdom descend into nightmare, village after village falling to undead hordes. The Lich King whispered to Arthas, not with words but with subtle manipulations, guiding the young prince toward increasingly desperate actions. The Lich King's first major cultist, the necromancer Kel'Thuzad, had been instrumental in spreading the plague. A former mage of the Kirin Tor, Kel'Thuzad had become disillusioned with the limitations of conventional magic and had sought forbidden knowledge. The Lich King had reached out to him, promising power beyond imagination. Kel'Thuzad founded the Cult of the Damned, a secret society of humans who worshiped the Lich King as a god and worked to prepare Lordaeron for the Scourge's arrival. When Arthas finally tracked down and killed Kel'Thuzad, the necromancer died with a smile on his face, secure in the knowledge that his death was merely a transition. The plague had already been released, the infected grain already distributed. The damage was done. Arthas discovered that the city of Stratholme had received a large shipment of plagued grain, and its citizens would soon transform into undead. The prince made a decision that would define his fate. He would purge the entire city, killing every citizen before they could transform. It was, in his mind, a mercy, death by the sword rather than transformation into a monster. Uther the Lightbringer and Jaina Proudmoore both pleaded with Arthas not to commit this atrocity. They argued that there must be another way, that they couldn't simply murder innocent people who might not even be infected. But Arthas, driven by desperation and the Lich King's subtle influence feeding his fears, rejected their counsel. He ordered his men to slaughter every citizen of Stratholme, men, women, and children alike, while the city burned around them. This act of mercy killing shattered Arthas spiritually. Order abandoned him, refusing to follow such orders and taking the silver hand away with him. Jaina left him as well, heartbroken by what the man she loved had become. But Arthas convinced himself that he had done what was necessary, that the hard choices were the right ones, that the ends justified the means. This rationalization was exactly what the Lich King had been counting on. The Lich King continued to guide Arthas northward, leading the prince to believe he was hunting down the source of the plague. Arthas pursued the Dreadlord Mal'Ganis, one of Kil'jaeden's agents sent to oversee the Lich King's work across the frozen wastes of Northrend. The prince led a military expedition across the ocean, determined to end the Scourge threat by destroying whatever commanded it. During this pursuit, Arthas grew increasingly obsessed with revenge against Mal'Ganis. The Dreadlord taunted him, staying just out of reach, leading him deeper into Northrend's frozen wilderness. When Arthas's troops began to mutiny, horrified by his brutal methods and the hopelessness of their quest, the prince secretly hired mercenaries to burn his own ships. He then blamed the betrayal on the mercenaries and had them executed, ensuring his men had no choice but to follow him deeper into the frozen continent. The prince's sanity frayed further with each step into the frozen north. He abandoned every principle he had once held dear, justifying each atrocity as necessary for victory. And the Lich King, watching from his frozen throne, knew his champion was nearly ready. Finally, the Lich King revealed his greatest weapon, Frostmourne. The cursed rune blade was embedded in ice deep within a cavern, guarded by a ghostly entity that identified itself as the blade's previous owner. This spirit warned all who approached that claiming the sword would cost them their soul, that Frostmourne carried a terrible curse that could never be lifted. But Arthas, desperate for the power to defeat Mal'Ganis and end the Scourge threat, saw only the weapon he needed to save his people. When the spirit warned him one final time, Arthas responded with words that sealed his doom. "I would gladly bear any curse to save my homeland." He rejected the warnings and grasped Frostmourne's hilt. The moment his fingers closed around the sword, Arthas' soul was ripped from his body and imprisoned within the blade. Everything that had made Arthas good, his compassion, his love for Jaina, his loyalty to his father, his sense of honor and duty, was torn away and locked within Frostmourne alongside the countless other souls the blade had claimed over the ages. What remained was a hollow shell, animated by the Lich King's will and filled with nothing but cold ambition and hunger for power. With Frostmourne in hand, Arthas easily defeated Mal'Ganis, cutting the Dreadlord down with contemptuous ease. The prince stood over the demon's body, believing he had achieved victory. But instead of feeling triumph, he felt only emptiness. And in that emptiness, he heard a voice calling to him, the voice of the Lich King, no longer subtle, but commanding, irresistible. Arthas returned to Lord Arryn, but not as its savior. The prince had become the Lich King's champion, a death knight of terrible power who would complete the Scourge's conquest of the human kingdoms. He arrived at his father's throne room during a celebration held in honor of his supposed victory in Northrend. King Tyrannus rose to greet his son, joy on his face, arms spread for an embrace. Arthas walked forward slowly, And just as the king began to speak words of welcome, the prince drove Frostmourne through his father's chest. The last thing Tyrannus saw was his son's cold, empty eyes staring back at him as the life faded from the old king's body. With his father dead, Arthas led the Scourge in a campaign of annihilation across Lordaeron. He killed his former mentor Uther the Lightbringer, claiming the urn that contained his father's ashes. In an act of profound desecration, Arthas dumped those ashes onto the ground and filled the urn with the remains of the necromancer Kel'Thuzad, whose death had been merely a transition in the Lich King's grand plan. The Death Knight carried Kel'Thuzad's remains to Kel'Thalas, the kingdom of the High Elves. There, Arthas waged a brutal campaign through the Elven lands, his undead army unstoppable. He killed the Ranger General Sylvanas Windrunner in battle, but rather than letting her find peace in death, he raised her as a banshee, a tormented spirit bound to serve the Scourge. He forced her to watch as she slaughtered her own people, unable to resist the Lich King's commands. Arthas breached the defenses of Silvermoon and reached the Sunwell, the source of the High Elves' power and immortality. Using the Sunwell's vast energies, Arthas resurrected Kel'Thuzad as a Lich, an undead spellcaster of immense power who would serve as the Lich King's most trusted lieutenant and primary agent in the world. Under Kel'Thuzad's guidance, Arthas continued the Scourge's campaign. They attacked the mage city of Dalaran and stole the Book of Medivh, an artifact of tremendous power. Using this tome, Kel'Thuzad performed a ritual that summoned Archimonde the Defiler directly to Azeroth. The Demon Lord emerged from a portal in the ruins of Dalaran and immediately took command of the Scourge forces, directing them toward the Night Elf lands in Kalimdor, where the World Tree Nordrassil grew. But the Lich King's plans ran deeper than Kil'jaeden or Archimonde realized. When Archimonde was ultimately defeated by the Night Elves at Mount Hyjal, destroyed by the fury of thousands of wisps who detonated the World Tree's power to kill him, the Lich King saw an opportunity. With Archimonde dead and Kil'jaeden's attention elsewhere, the Lich King made his move toward independence. Meanwhile, at Kil'jaeden's command, Illidan Stormrage, released from his 10,000-year imprisonment, attempted to destroy the Lich King using the Eye of Sargeras, an artifact of immense magical power. Illidan's goal was to channel a massive spell through the Eye that would shatter the Frozen Throne and kill the Lich King, earning Kil'jaeden's favor. Though Illidan's spell was interrupted before completion by his brother Malfurion, it still managed to fracture the ice of the Frozen Throne. This damage weakened the Lich King's prison and, more importantly, caused his power to fade. The Lich King's telepathic control over his undead minions began to weaken as cracks spread through the glacier. This weakening had an unexpected consequence. Many undead found themselves freed from the Lich King's control as his grip on their minds slipped. Sylvanas Windrunner, the Banshee Queen who had been raised and enslaved by Arthas, was among those who regained her free will. The experience of servitude, forced to watch helplessly as she slaughtered her own people, had filled her with a hatred so intense it burned like fire. Sylvanas rallied other freed undead and formed the Forsaken, a faction dedicated to destroying both the Scourge and the living, who they blamed for allowing their fate to occur. They claimed the ruins of Lordaeron's capital as their own, establishing the Undercity in the sewers beneath the destroyed palace. The Forsaken declared war on both the Scourge and anyone who would threaten their dark freedom. The Lich King, feeling his power waning and knowing that Illidan would eventually come to finish what he started, called out to his champion, Arthas, who had been fighting Forsaken and demons in the ruins of Lordaeron, heard the summons and immediately abandoned everything to journey to Northrend. The Death Knight understood that his master was in danger, and more importantly, that this was the moment they had been preparing for. What followed was a race between Arthas and Illidan to reach the Frozen Throne first. Illidan, backed by his Naga followers under Lady Vash and the Blood Elves led by Kael'thas Sunstrider, fought to destroy the Lich King and claim power for himself. Arthas, wielding Frostmourne and commanding remnants of the Scourge loyal to him, battled through Illidan's forces in a desperate attempt to save his master. The campaign was brutal. Arthas fought his way across Northrend, destroying anyone who stood between him and the Frozen Throne. He killed his old friend Muradin Bronzebeard, who tried to stop him. He slaughtered blood elves and Naga by the hundreds. Nothing would prevent him from reaching the Lich King. The two forces met at the base of Ice-Crowned Glacier, where Arthas and Illidan engaged in single combat. Both were immensely powerful. Illidan wielded demonic magic and had consumed the skull of Gul'dan, transforming himself into a demon. Arthas carried Frostmourne, a blade that had claimed thousands of souls and granted him necromantic power. They fought in a battle that shook the very foundations of the glacier. Despite Illidan's demonic power and 10,000 years of experience, Arthas proved victorious, perhaps because the Lich King lent his champion strength at the crucial moment, or perhaps because Arthas had simply become more monster than man, unencumbered by doubt, mercy, or any human weakness. With a final strike, Arthas drove Frostmourne through Illidan's chest, leaving the demon hunter broken but not dead on the ice. With Illidan defeated, Arthas ascended the ice stairs to the frozen throne. Using Frostmourne, he struck the glacier containing the Helm of Domination. The ice shattered, revealing the ancient artifact that had housed Ner'zhul's spirit for so long. As the shards fell away, the Lich King's voice spoke to Arthas one final time, urging the Death Knight to claim the helm and complete his transformation. Arthas reached out and placed the Helm of Domination upon his head. In that instant, the spirits of Arthas Menethil and Ner'zhul merged into a single entity. The boundaries between Death Knight and necromantic consciousness dissolved. The Lich King was reborn, now possessing both Ner'zhul's mastery of death and Arthas's physical form and memories. Neither personality dominated completely. They had become something new, something more terrible than either had been alone, a being that combined human ambition with the cold detachment of undeath. For years, the new Lich King sat upon the frozen throne, consolidating power and preparing for the day when he would unleash the scourge upon the world once more. Kil'jaeden subjected Ner'zhul to tortures beyond mortal comprehension. He flayed the orc's skin, tore his body apart piece by piece until nothing remained but the shaman's tortured spirit. But Kil'jaeden did not destroy Ner'zhul entirely. Instead, he had a new purpose for the orc's soul. The Demon Lord's agents, the Nathrazim Dreadlords, had discovered something during their explorations of the cosmos, the Shadowlands, the realm of death itself. Within this dimension of afterlife, they found an artifact of tremendous power, the Helm of Domination, a crown that could control and bind the souls and bodies of the dead. Kil'jaeden bound Ner'zhul's spirit to the Helm of Domination, transforming him into something that was no longer orc, no longer mortal, but something else entirely, the Lich King. This new entity possessed power over death and necromancy that rivaled the old gods themselves. And Kil'jaeden had a very specific task for his creation. The Lich King was cast into the frozen wastes of Northrend, the Arctic continent of Azeroth, still bound within the Helm of Domination. Upon impact, a massive glacier formed around the helm, creating what would be known as the Frozen Throne. From within this icy prison, the Lich King's consciousness reached out, testing the limits of his new powers. Ner'zhul found that he could animate the dead, pulling their souls back into their corpses and binding them to his will. He could spread a plague that would transform the living into undead servants. He could create liches from powerful spellcasters, preserving their magical abilities while enslaving their spirits. Most terrifyingly, he could influence the minds of the living, whispering to them, corrupting them, turning them into willing servants of death. The Lich King's first servants were the native inhabitants of Northrend, the Drakari ice trolls, the barbaric Vrykul, the Nerubians, an ancient spider people who had once been servants of the old gods. All fell to the Lich King's power. Their corpses were raised as undead soldiers. Their spirits were bound to serve. Slowly, an army of death began to form in the frozen north. But the Lich King was not simply a mindless servant of the Burning Legion. Ner'zhul's consciousness, though twisted and transformed, remained within the Lich King, and Ner'zhul remembered his torment at Kil'jaeden's hands. The orc shaman's spirit burned with a desire for revenge against the demons who had destroyed him. From the very beginning, the Lich King plotted to break free from Kil'jaeden's control. To achieve this freedom, the Lich King would need more than an army of mindless undead. He would need agents with intelligence, with power, with the ability to act independently while still serving his will. He would need a champion, someone who could serve as his vessel in the physical world. The Lich King found his champion in Prince Arthas Menethil of Lordaeron. Arthas was everything the Lich King needed: young, powerful, idealistic, and desperate. As a paladin of the Silver Hand, Arthas had dedicated his life to protecting his people from evil. He was the beloved prince of the most powerful human kingdom, trained by the legendary Uther the Lightbringer, and engaged to the talented mage Jaina Proudmoore. His future seemed bright beyond measure, but when the plague of undeath, a disease created by the Lich King specifically to transform victims into undead servants, began spreading through Lordaeron, Arthas found himself facing an enemy he could not defeat through courage and righteousness alone. No matter how many infected he killed, more appeared. No matter how hard he fought, the plague spread further. The Lich King whispered to Arthas, not with words but with subtle manipulations, guiding the young prince toward increasingly desperate actions. When Arthas discovered that the city of Stratholme had been infected by plague grain, he made a decision that would define his fate. He would purge the entire city, killing every citizen before they could transform into undead. Uther the Lightbringer and Jaina Proudmoore both pleaded with Arthas not to commit this atrocity, arguing that there must be another way. But Arthas, driven by desperation and the Lich King's subtle influence, rejected their counsel. He ordered his men to slaughter every citizen of Stratholme, men, women, and children alike, while the city burned around them. This act of mercy killing shattered Arthas spiritually. Uther abandoned him, taking the Silver Hand away. Jaina left him, heartbroken by what he had become. But Arthas convinced himself that he had done what was necessary, that the hard choices were the right ones, that the ends justified the means. The Lich King continued to guide Arthas northward, leading the prince to believe he was hunting down the source of the plague. The prince led a military expedition to Northrend, where he pursued the dreadlord Mal'Ganis, one of Kil'jaeden's agents sent to oversee the Lich King's work across the frozen wastes. During this pursuit, Arthas grew increasingly obsessed with revenge against Mal'Ganis. When his troops began to abandon him, horrified by his brutal methods, Arthas secretly hired mercenaries to burn his own ships, ensuring his men had no choice but to follow him deeper into Northrend. The prince's sanity frayed further with each step into the frozen north. Finally, the Lich King revealed his greatest weapon, Frostmourne. The cursed rune blade was embedded in ice, guarded by a ghostly entity that warned all who approached that claiming the sword would cost them their soul. But Arthas, desperate for the power to defeat Mal'Ganis and end the scourge threat, saw only the weapon he needed to save his people. He rejected the warnings and grasped Frostmourne's hilt. The moment his fingers closed around the sword, Arthas' soul was ripped from his body and imprisoned within the blade. Everything that had made Arthas good, his compassion, his love, his righteousness, was torn away. What remained was a hollow shell, animated by the Lich King's will and filled with nothing but cold ambition and hunger for power. With Frostmourne in hand, Arthas easily defeated Mal'Ganis. But instead of returning home victorious, the prince found himself drawn back to Lordaeron by the Lich King's commands. He had become the Lich King's champion, a death knight of terrible power who would complete the Scourge's conquest of the human kingdoms. Arthas returned to Lordaeron and immediately assassinated his own father, King Tyrrhenus, plunging Frostmourne into the king's chest as the old man tried to embrace his son. He then led the Scourge in a campaign of annihilation across Lordaeron, killing his former mentor Uther and claiming the urn containing his father's ashes, which he desecrated by dumping the ashes out and filling the urn with the remains of the necromancer Kel'Thuzad. The Death Knight carried Kel'Thuzad's remains to Quel'Thalas, the kingdom of the High Elves. There, Arthas waged a brutal campaign through the Elven lands, killing the Ranger General Sylvanas Windrunner and raising her as a banshee to serve the Scourge. He breached the defenses of Silvermoon and reached the Sunwell, the source of the High Elves' power. Using the Sunwell's energies, Arthas resurrected Kel'Thuzad as a Lich, an undead spellcaster of immense power who would serve as the Lich King's most trusted lieutenant. Under Kel'Thuzad's guidance, Arthas continued the Scourge's campaign. They attacked Dalaran and used the Book of Medivh to summon Archimonde the Defiler directly to Azeroth. The Demon Lord emerged from a portal in the ruins of Dalaran and immediately took command of the Scourge forces, directing them toward the Night Elf lands in Kalimdor. But the Lich King's plans ran deeper than Kil'jaeden or Archimonde realized. When Archimonde was ultimately defeated by the Night Elves at Mount Hyjal, destroyed by the fury of thousands of wisps who sacrificed themselves to kill him, the Lich King saw an opportunity. With Archimonde dead and Kil'jaeden's attention elsewhere, the Lich King made his move toward independence. Meanwhile, at Kil'jaeden's command, Illidan Stormrage, released from his 10,000-year imprisonment, attempted to destroy the Lich King using the Eye of Sargeras. Though Illidan's spell was interrupted before completion, it still fractured the ice of the Frozen Throne, weakening the Lich King's prison and causing his power to fade. This weakening had an unexpected consequence. Many undead found themselves freed from the Lich King's control as his grip on their minds slipped. Sylvanas Windrunner, the Banshee Queen, was among those who regained her free will. Consumed by hatred for Arthas and the Lich King, she rallied other freed undead and formed the Forsaken, declaring war on both the Scourge and the living. The Lich King, feeling his power waning and knowing that Illidan would eventually come to finish what he started, called out to his champion, Arthas, who had been fighting Forsaken and demons in the ruins of Lordaeron, heard the summons and immediately abandoned everything to journey to Northrend. What followed was a race between Arthas and Illidan to reach the Frozen Throne first. Illidan, backed by his Naga followers and the Blood Elves, fought to destroy the Lich King and claim power for himself. Arthas, wielding Frostmourne and commanding remnants of the Scourge, battled through Illidan's forces in a desperate attempt to save his master. The two forces met at the base of Icecrown Glacier, where Arthas and Illidan engaged in single combat. Despite Illidan's demonic power and 10,000 years of experience, Arthas proved victorious. Perhaps because the Lich King lent his champion strength at the crucial moment, or perhaps because Arthas had simply become more monster than man, unencumbered by doubt or mercy. With Illidan defeated, Arthas ascended the ice stairs to the Frozen Throne. Using Frostmourne, he shattered the ice encasing the Helm of Domination. As the glacier broke apart, the Lich King's voice spoke to Arthas one final time, urging the Death Knight to claim the helm and complete his transformation. Arthas placed the Helm of Domination upon his head, and in that instant, the spirits of Arthas Menethil and Ner'zhul merged into a single entity. The Lich King was reborn, now possessing both Ner'zhul's mastery of death and Arthas' physical form. Neither personality dominated, they had become something new, something more terrible than either had been alone. For years, the new Lich King sat upon the Frozen Throne, consolidating power and preparing for the day when he would unleash the Scourge upon the world once more. The undead built Icecrown Citadel around the throne, a fortress of frozen metal and tortured souls that would serve as the Scourge's capital. Deep within that citadel, the Lich King plotted, schemed, and waited for his moment to achieve his ultimate goal. But the Lich King's ambitions had evolved beyond merely serving Kil'jaeden or conquering Azeroth. During his years on the throne, as Arthas' memories merged with Ner'zhul's ancient knowledge, a new vision emerged, not the destruction of all life as the Burning Legion desired, but the domination of all existence under his eternal rule. The Lich King would transform everyone living and dead into undead servants, creating a world of perfect order where death itself was merely a transition into his service. Years passed, the Scourge grew stronger, and finally, the Lich King made his move. He launched a massive assault on Azeroth's major cities, sending waves of undead and spreading a new plague through the lands. This aggression forced the Alliance and Horde to set aside their differences and launch a united campaign into Northrend. Heroes from across Azeroth, including many who had known Arthas before his fall, journeyed to the frozen continent to end the Scourge threat once and for all. The campaign was long and costly. The Alliance and Horde established footholds in Northrend, built fortifications, and fought their way through the Scourge's defenses. They discovered that the Lich King had not been idle. Ice-crowned Citadel stood as a monument to necromantic power, a fortress designed to be impregnable. But the champions of Azeroth persevered, led by High Lord Tyrion Fordring, wielding the purified blade Ashbringer, the very sword that had once belonged to Alexandros Mograine. They stormed Ice-crowned Citadel. They fought through legions of undead, defeated the Lich King's most powerful lieutenants, and finally reached the frozen throne itself. There they faced Arthas in battle. The fight was desperate. The Lich King possessed power beyond anything they had faced before, enhanced by the countless souls Frostmourne had claimed over the years. He seemed invincible, easily defeating the champions who had overcome so many other threats. At what appeared to be the moment of victory for the Lich King, he struck down every hero present, intending to raise them as his most powerful Death Knights. But in that moment of triumph, Tyrion Fordring called upon the light with every ounce of faith he possessed. The ice that had frozen him shattered, and Ashbringer blazed with holy power. Tyrion struck Frostmourne with the purified blade, and the cursed rune blade which had claimed so many souls, which had damned Arthas Menethil, finally shattered. From the broken blade erupted the spirits of everyone Frostmourne had claimed: King Tyrannus, Uther the Lightbringer, and thousands of others. These souls, freed at last, turned on the Lich King. Weakened by the destruction of his greatest weapon, Arthas fell to his knees. Tyrion and the champions approached the dying Lich King. As Arthas's life faded, he saw a vision of his father, King Tyrannus. The old king's spirit appeared, cradling his son in his arms, as Arthas had once been cradled as a child. The prince, his mind finally clear of the Lich King's influence in these final moments, asked a question that would haunt all who heard it. Is it over? Tyrannus responded gently, at long last. No king rules forever, my son. Arthas Menethil died, and with him the dominant personality that had controlled the Scourge. But even in death, the Lich King's warning proved true. Tyrannus' spirit told Tyrion that the Scourge must always have a master to control them. Without the Lich King's will binding them, millions of undead would rampage across Azeroth unchecked, killing everything in their path. Tyrion prepared to take up the helm of domination himself, to become the new jailer of the damned. But he was stopped by a voice from below the throne: Bolvar Fordragon, a paladin who had been captured and tortured by Arthas during the war, who had been burned by dragon fire at the Wrathgate, emerged from the shadows. His body was horribly scarred, his flesh charred, but he still lived, if such an existence could be called life. Bolvar told Tyrion that he had no place among the living anymore, while Tyrion still had duties to perform in the world of light. As his final act of service, Bolvar would take the powers of the Lich King within himself, imprisoning the master of the Scourge once more and keeping the undead legions in check. He would become not a conqueror, but a jailer, the jailer of the damned. Tyrion reluctantly placed the crown of the Lich King on Bolvar's head. As the ice of the frozen throne began to envelop him, Bolvar, now the new Lich King, told Tyrion to tell the world that the Lich King was dead. Tyrion and the champions of Azeroth left Northrend, and a silence fell over Icecrown. That silence would hold for years. Bolvar sat upon the frozen throne, his will binding the Scourge, keeping them from rampaging across the world. He remained there through the Cataclysm, through the wars against Deathwing, through conflicts with the Burning Legion's return. The new Lich King was true to his word, acting not as a conqueror, but as a warden, ensuring the undead remained controlled. But nothing lasts forever. Years later, Sylvanas Windrunner, who had never forgiven Arthas for what he had done to her and who had grown increasingly ruthless in her leadership of the Forsaken, discovered the truth about Bolvar. She journeyed to Icecrown, confronted the Lich King, and in a display of power that shocked all who witnessed it, defeated him in single combat. Then, in an act that would have catastrophic consequences, Sylvanas tore the helm of domination from Bolvar's head and shattered it. The helm's destruction ripped open a portal to the Shadowlands, the realm of death itself. Without a Lich King to control them, the Scourge began to rampage across Azeroth once more, just as the spirits had warned. But that is a story for another time, a tale of the afterlife revealed, of cosmic forces manipulating events from beyond death, and of truths that would shake the foundations of everything Azeroth's heroes thought they knew about life, death, and destiny itself. The Warcraft movie, a portal between worlds, an alternate chronicle. In some records and tellings of history, the first war between orcs and humans unfolded differently than the accounts preserved in the archives of Stormwind and Orgrimmar. These alternate chronicles, recorded by certain historians and preserved in visual form, present a version of events that explores different perspectives on the same great conflict. While the core truths remain, a dying world, a desperate invasion, and heroes on both sides fighting for survival, the details diverge in meaningful ways. What follows is one such alternate telling, a chronicle that focuses more deeply on the personal stories of individuals caught in the maelstrom of war, particularly the honorable orc chieftain Durotan and the human commander Anduin Lothar. Whether this represents a parallel timeline, a different perspective on the same events, or simply another interpretation by chroniclers attempting to capture a complex truth, scholars continue to debate. What matters is that it tells a story of honor, sacrifice, and the tragedy that occurs when two peoples are forced into conflict, not by choice, but by desperation. The story begins not on Azeroth, but on Draenor, a world dying under the corruption of fell magic. The warlock Gul'dan has united the orcish clans into the Horde, but his reckless use of dark magic has drained Draenor of life. The planet is becoming a wasteland, unable to support the orcish population. Gul'dan promises salvation. He will open a portal to another world, a fertile realm called Azeroth, where the Horde can make a new home. But opening such a portal requires immense power, and Gul'dan's fell magic demands a terrible price. To fuel the gateway between worlds, he must drain the life force from living beings. He captures hundreds of Draenei prisoners and uses their life essence to power the portal, transforming them into withered husks as their souls fuel his dark spell. Among the first orcs to pass through this initial portal is Durotan, chieftain of the Frostwolf clan. Durotan is an honorable warrior who fights not for conquest, but for his people's survival. He travels with his pregnant mate Draka and his closest friend Orgrim Doomhammer. Though Durotan has doubts about Gul'dan's methods, he believes the warlock when told that Azeroth is the orcs' only hope for survival. During the journey through the portal, Draka goes into labor. The stress of the transit causes her to give birth prematurely, and the infant emerges stillborn. Gul'dan uses his fell magic to revive the child, draining life from a nearby deer to save the baby's life. The infant's skin, which would have been brown like his father's, turns green from the fell energy used to revive him. Durotan names his son Goel, meaning go with honor in the orcish tongue. The Horde begins raiding human settlements across the region surrounding the portal, which has emerged in an area called the Blasted Lands. These early attacks are brutal and swift, with human defenders completely unprepared for the orcish onslaught. Entire villages are destroyed, their population slaughtered or captured to be used as fuel for Gul'dan's magic. News of these attacks reaches Stormwind, the greatest human kingdom in the region. King Lanrain, a noble and just ruler, commands his military commander, Anduin Lothar, to investigate. Lothar, a veteran warrior who has served the kingdom all his life, leads a scouting party to one of the attacked villages. There, Lothar encounters a young mage named Khadgar, who has left the Kirin Tor, the Mage Council of Dalaran, to investigate reports of strange magic in the area. Khadgar, brilliant but inexperienced, has discovered traces of fell magic among the dead, a type of power that hasn't been seen on Azeroth in thousands of years, not since the War of the Ancients. King Lane, recognizing the severity of the threat, orders Lothar and Khadgar to seek the counsel of Medivh, the guardian of Tirisfal. Medivh is the most powerful mage in Azeroth, granted tremendous power to protect the world from magical threats. His tower, Karazhan, stands as a monument to arcane might, filled with libraries of ancient knowledge and artifacts of incredible power. In Karazhan, Khadgar begins researching the nature of fell magic. During his studies, a ghostly presence leads him to a mysterious tome that hints at dark truths about the Guardian himself. But before Khadgar can delve deeper, Medivh joins Lothar on a mission to investigate the orc incursions firsthand. During a scouting expedition, Lothar, Khadgar, and Medivh are ambushed by orcs. The battle goes poorly for the humans until Medivh unleashes a devastating spell that obliterates the fell-corrupted orcs in an instant. However, one orc manages to escape, Blackhand, the brutal chieftain who serves as Gul'dan's enforcer. In the aftermath of the battle, Lothar captures a half-orc slave named Garona. Born of both orc and human heritage, Garona has never belonged to either world fully. She reveals that a powerful warlock named Gul'dan is leading the orcs, and that he possesses magic granted by a dark force. She tells them of the portal and the dying world of Draenor, giving the humans their first understanding of why the orcs have come to Azeroth. King Lane, showing mercy and wisdom, frees Garona in exchange for her loyalty. He believes that if humans and orcs could find common ground, perhaps war could be avoided. Garona, touched by the king's compassion, a quality she has never encountered before, agrees to serve as a liaison between the two peoples. Meanwhile, among the orcs, Durotan grows increasingly disturbed by Gul'dan's methods. The warlock continues to use fell magic indiscriminately, draining life from prisoners to power his spells and strengthen his warriors. Durotan sees the same corruption in Azeroth that destroyed Draenor and realizes that Gul'dan is leading his people down a path that will ultimately destroy them as surely as it destroyed their homeworld. Durotan confides in Orgrim, sharing his fears about Gul'dan's true intentions. The two friends realize they must take action, but challenging Gul'dan directly would be suicide. The warlock has made himself essential to the Horde's survival, and most orcs believe they need his power to conquer Azeroth and secure their new home. Garona leads Lothar, Khadgar, and a small force of humans to spy on the orc encampment. Hidden among the rocks, they observe Gul'dan preparing a massive ritual. He is building a new, much larger portal, one that will allow the entire orcish horde to cross over from Draenor. But the power required for such a feat is immense. Gul'dan has been capturing humans specifically to fuel this ritual, planning to drain the life from hundreds or thousands of prisoners to open his gateway. Khadgar, meanwhile, continues his research into fell magic and Medivh's connection to it. His investigations lead him to a terrible discovery. Medivh himself has been corrupted. The Guardian's exposure to fell magic has twisted him, and he is secretly in league with Gul'dan, helping the warlock open the portal from Azeroth's side. The very protector sworn to defend their world is working to bring about its conquest. Durotan, unable to remain silent any longer, challenges Gul'dan to Mak'gora, a sacred orcish duel to the death that will determine who leads the Horde. According to ancient tradition, the duel must be fought with honor, using only combat prowess with no magic involved. If Durotan can defeat Gul'dan in Mak'gora, he will expose the warlock as a coward and a betrayer, rallying the Horde to abandon fell magic and find a different path forward. The Mak'gora begins with all the assembled orcs watching. Durotan fights with courage and skill, matching Gul'dan blow for blow. For a moment, it seems the honorable chieftain might actually prevail, but Gul'dan, caring nothing for tradition or honor, cheats. He uses fell magic during the duel, draining Durotan's life force directly. The Frostwolf chieftain collapses, his body withering as Gul'dan sucks the very essence from him. The gathered orcs murmur in disapproval. Gul'dan has violated the sacred rules of Mak'gora, revealing himself as dishonorable, but the warlock simply empowers Blackhand with the stolen life energy, making his enforcer even more fearsome. The message is clear. Gul'dan's power is absolute, and those who oppose him will die. With Durotan dead, Gul'dan's plan proceeds unchallenged. Medivh, now fully transformed and showing his corruption physically, his appearance becoming increasingly demonic, begins opening the portal from Azeroth's side. Gul'dan starts sacrificing the hundreds of captured human villagers, using their life force to stabilize and expand the gateway. The portal grows massive, large enough for entire armies to march through. King Lan mobilizes the full military might of Stormwind and leads an assault on the orc encampment, hoping to close the portal before the main Horde army can cross over. But Khadgar and Lothar have a different objective. They must stop Medivh. whose power is essential to keeping the portal open, the two warriors storm Karazhan, confronting the corrupted guardian in his own tower. The battle is desperate, with Medivh wielding magic far beyond either Lothar's martial skill or Khadgar's developing powers. But Khadgar realizes that Medivh is not acting alone. A demon has possessed the guardian, using his body as a vessel to facilitate the invasion. In a moment of insight, Khadgar uses a purification spell, attempting to drive the demon from Medivh's body. The spell succeeds, but at a terrible cost. Medivh, freed from demonic possession but mortally wounded by the trauma of the exorcism, uses the last of his strength to perform one final act of redemption. Instead of keeping the portal to Draenor open, Medivh closes it. In its place, he opens a portal to Stormwind, creating an escape route for King Lan and the captured human prisoners. The king orders his forces to retreat, saving most of his people from the Orcish assault. But in creating this escape, Medivh exhausts his remaining life force. The guardian of Tirisfal dies, his spirit finally free of the corruption that had consumed him. With the portal to Draenor closed and Medivh dead, the full Orcish horde is cut off. They cannot cross over to Azeroth. But those orcs already in Azeroth remain, including Gul'dan, Blackhand, and a significant portion of the Horde's forces. And King Lan, having evacuated most of his soldiers, finds himself trapped with only a small guard and Garona at his side. The king and Garona have grown close during the conflict, bound by mutual respect and a shared hope that peace between their peoples might still be possible. In this moment, facing inevitable capture or death, Lan makes an extraordinary decision. He orders Garona to kill him. The king explains his reasoning. If Garona kills him and presents his body to Gul'dan, she will be welcomed as a hero among the orcs. This will give her status, influence, and the ability to potentially guide the Horde toward peace in the future. More immediately, his death by her hand, rather than death in battle, will demoralize the humans less, while simultaneously earning Garona the trust of the orcs. Garona, tears streaming down her face, protests. But Lani insists. It is his final command, his ultimate sacrifice for his people and for the hope of future peace. Reluctantly, knowing the king is right, but hating every moment, Garona drives her blade into Lani's chest. When the orcs arrive, they find King Lani dead by Garona's hand. Galani welcomes her into the Horde, honoring her as the one who struck down the enemy king. The orcs celebrate their victory, believing they have broken the humans' will to resist. But Anduin Lothar arrives moments later to retrieve his king's body. He sees Garona's blade embedded in Lani's chest and understands what happened. His friend sacrificed himself to place an agent of potential peace among the orcs. Though heartbroken, Lothar keeps his composure as Blackhand, seeking to cement the Horde's dominance, challenges him to Mak'gora. In a fierce duel watched by both orcs and the few remaining humans, Lothar faces Blackhand. The Orcish warrior is larger, stronger, enhanced by Gul'dan's fell magic, but Lothar fights with the desperation of a man who has lost everything: his king, his friend, and nearly his entire world. Through skill, cunning, and sheer determination, Lothar manages to defeat and kill Blackhand. The watching orcs, bound by the tradition of Mak'gora, allow Lothar to leave with King Lane's body. Even Gul'dan cannot violate this sacred tradition openly, though his displeasure is evident. At Lane's funeral in Stormwind, the leaders of the various human kingdoms gather, nobles from Lord Aeron, Alterac, Gilneas, Kultiras, and Dalaran. Representatives of the High Elves and Dwarves also attend, having heard of the Orcish threat. In the face of this new danger, these disparate peoples agree to unite. They form the Alliance, pledging to stand together against the Orcish Horde, and they name Anduin Lothar as their supreme commander, the one who will lead their combined forces in the wars to come. Lothar, still grieving but resolute, accepts this burden, swearing to honor his fallen king by protecting Azeroth from the Orcish invasion. Meanwhile, far from these political machinations, a small basket floats down a river in Orcish territory. Inside is the infant Golul, son of Durotan, placed there by Orgrim after his father's death. Orgrim kept one of Durotan's tusks, vowing to one day return it to the child when he comes of age and tell him of his father's honor. The basket drifts downstream until it reaches human lands, where it is discovered by a human lord's servant. The green-skinned baby is taken in, beginning a journey that will one day make him one of the most important figures in Azeroth's history. This child will be raised by humans, will earn the name Thrall, and will eventually unite the Orcish horde and lead them away from demonic corruption toward redemption. But those events lie years in the future. For now, the stage is set for decades of war between the Alliance and the Horde, conflicts that will reshape Azeroth and test whether these two peoples can ever find common ground, or whether they are doomed to fight until one or the other is annihilated. Minor conclusion: the never-ending story. And so concludes this journey through the vast and complex lore of the Warcraft universe, from the cosmic origins of the Titans and the corruption of Sargeras, through the dark ages of the Black Empire and the Old God's dominion, across the War of the Ancients and the sundering that shattered the world, and into the more recent conflicts between the Alliance and Horde that continue to shape Azeroth's destiny. We've explored how the Burning Legion was born from a Titan's desperate desire to save the universe by destroying it. We've witnessed the imprisonment of the Old Gods and seen how their whispers continue to corrupt even from behind their cosmic prisons. We've watched the Night Elves rise from simple trolls to masters of arcane magic, only to nearly destroy their world through hubris. We've seen the Orcs transformed from honorable shamans into fell-corrupted killing machines, and glimpsed the tragedy of individuals like Arthas Menethil, whose noble intentions paved a road straight to damnation. The Warcraft universe is a chronicle of cycles of corruption and redemption, of empire and fall, of war and fragile peace. It is a world where ancient evils never truly die but merely sleep, where the sins of the past echo across millennia, and where every victory against darkness comes at a terrible cost. The Old Gods still whisper from their prisons. The Burning Legion, though defeated at Argus, has not been completely destroyed. The Scourge, even without a Lich King to command them, remains a threat. And deep within Azeroth's core, the nascent Titan continues her slow awakening. Her dreams influenced by every battle fought upon her surface, every spell cast, every act of heroism and villainy that has occurred in her name. This is Warcraft, a saga of cosmic stakes and deeply personal tragedies, of ordinary individuals thrust into extraordinary circumstances, of the eternal struggle between order and chaos, light and shadow, life and death. It is a story that continues to unfold across the ages, each era adding new chapters to an ever-expanding chronicle of heroes and villains, triumphs and tragedies. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Azeroth's history. Until next time, this is Grandpa Ben reminding you that every legend begins somewhere, and every choice, no matter how small, can change the course of worlds. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Warcraft lore, please remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more extensive explorations of epic fantasy worlds and their mythologies. For Azeroth, for the Alliance, for the Horde, for all those who have fought, sacrificed, and believed in a world worth saving.